Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, everybody. Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. It is July 30th, 2014. I'm your host, Andrew Fisher, broadcasting every Wednesday from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to expose the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it isn't in this matrix prison planet we call Earth, and the rest of consciousness for that matter. And today we're going to have Alan Steinfeld on the show, yet another member of the Free Your Mind 2013 conference in Philadelphia. Contacted all the people who were at that conference, got a lot of responses, had a lot of them on my show, and I'm going to have John G. Vibes, another conference guest, on my show next week. But today it is Alan Steinfeld. He is known for the site newrealities.com, and we're going to be talking about a myriad of subjects today: health, sexuality, immortality, metaphysics, new sciences, human potential, Eastern and Western spirituality, shamanism, paranormal, UFOs, ecology, politics and the economy, and creativity. Well, frankly, I don't really know which one of these things that Alan is an expert in and which things he is not an expert in. I did tell him we'll try to cover a little bit of everything on your site. If that means we have to do the show on the fly just to get them all in, then so be it. And I also told him that presentation he gave at the conference, might as well use that as a little bit of a guide of sorts, because he probably put the important stuff in there. So maybe I'll ask him about that, and we'll talk about that stuff first. But first, I do have something to say before I get into the news. I used to say on my show that the show Ancient Aliens, even though I think it is mostly accurate in general in terms of when aliens played a role in human history, I have said that I also think it is a bit of a disinformation campaign, and one of the reasons why is because they almost never talked about reptilian aliens, except for like one or two occasions, and one of those occasions they did mention shapeshifting into a human, into a reptilian and all, but still, they should have been talking about reptilians a lot more than that, and they almost never did. Well, that all changed this past Friday with the season premiere of Ancient Aliens, and I do encourage everybody to watch every episode of the show, use your own discernment, and also check out the new show that's after that on the H2 channel. It's In Search of Aliens, and Giorgio Tsoukalos is the host of that show, Journeys the Earth in Search of Aliens, a new series. I like the first episode. It's about Atlantis, but the highlight of the new Ancient Aliens episode, Giorgio Tsoukalos did say at the end of the episode that he does not subscribe to the idea of the reptilian agenda. Yeah, the episode was about reptilians, and David Icke appeared in there a few times. I mean, he did appear in some other episodes, but it was only like for a couple very brief snippets, so they were trying to ignore him while they gave him a lot of airtime in this episode. And by the way, I want to make something very clear. Icke did not come up with the idea of the reptile alien on his own. He actually came up with the idea thanks to Jordan Maxwell, who introduced it to him after Maxwell brought Icke to America in the early 1990s. So Jordan Maxwell, I guess, is the real reptile alien guru in a sense. But anyway, Giorgio said he did not subscribe to the reptile alien agenda. He didn't explain why, but he said he thinks it would be a cop-out for people to say that we are slaves, and we're in the situation we're in because we're slaves to some reptilian race. He thinks that would be a cop-out. Well, I'm sure Giorgio's going to get harassed by a lot of reptile alien researchers making that assertion. But I will make sure I get Alan Steinfeld on. I believe that is him in the call-in line. But first, I do have to cover the news. We'll do it courtesy of Alex Jones and Company at Infowars.com. I'll try to do this on the fly. Get Alan on no later than 10 after the hour. But first article, whistleblower calls for impeachment of Obama over NSA spying. The whistleblower is William Binney, who is arguably the highest-ranking whistleblower in NSA history. He wasn't the first. Russell Tice, I believe, was the first. And I don't remember what he blew the whistle on, but I hear it was the first. So said it's Infowars, and they say William Binney was the highest-ranking NSA whistleblower ever. Snowden, well, he did the best act of all, but he was just a contractor, so not the highest-ranked Binney. He was like head of the technical department. And he said intelligence agencies are running government, and Obama, if he doesn't do something about it, he deserves to be impeached. Well, many people deserve to be impeached for this, and the reason nobody's doing anything about it is because, well, if they try to stop the NSA surveillance system, they're going to go through hell, just like Tom Drake went through hell by being charged with the Espionage Act for blowing the whistle on the NSA surveillance system, and now Edward Snowden is, although he is not going to be going to trial like Drake had to. Thomas Drake, he was found not guilty because they ran out of ideas to prosecute him. with Snowden, they I don't know what ideas they're going to have to prosecute him, but if they can't catch him, he won't be going to trial. So next article, Senate border bill moves forward. Funding for Israel and Western wildfires backed on legislation. Tacked on legislation. Funding for Israel and Western wildfires tacked on legislation. So this whole border thing. Let's not let people into this country when we are in on a conspiracy to make those people that we're letting into the country screw over the rest of the American people. That's really, really uncool, but that's what they want to do. And as far as Israel goes, the Rothschild Zionists are headquartered in Israel. The Rothschild family is the most powerful Illuminati bloodline family, and Zionism is their movement. And this whole thing on Western wildfires, I'm not exactly sure what that's about. But anyway, we got to move on to the next article here. Geraldo Rivera accuses Matt Drudge of fomenting a civil war over border crisis. Accuses Drudge of engaging in racist behavior. Geraldo Rivera, he's actually been on the Alex Jones show a few times. I guess that was his way of apologizing to Alex Jones for flipping him off at a 9/11 Truth rally at Ground Zero on September 11th. And Rivera was scratching his ears, but he was using his middle finger. And Alex Jones, he actually got arrested after that for using a bullhorn without a permit, so says the unconstitutional law of New York that they arrested him for there. And Geraldo, he since has all but admitted that he's an 9/11 truther when he let the victims' family members on his show and almost got fired. But now Geraldo Rivera seems to be taking away from his supporting Alex Jones side by accusing Matt Drudge of fomenting some civil war. Well, Matt Drudge, it's just a whole slew of news stories. It stockpiles news stories from different sources, the Drudge Report does. So why blame him? He's just making news stories get put on his website. Well, I don't know. Talk to Geraldo Rivera about that one to see why he has a problem with it. Next article, Keith Olbermann trash talks Drudge, Infowars, in bizarre Twitter rant. Former NBC host stages irate outburst. Oh, yeah, trend here, I think Infowars is trying to get at. People are going after the alternative media that cares about getting the truth out. It's disgusting. Come on, people. Realize that the media you're working for is doing the brainwashing. All right, next article. Analysis. Bill banning in quote marks here, NSA data collection will not stop mass spying. Agency will still be able to access communications metadata. Yeah, because they're going to ignore the law. The NSA always ignores the law. Next article. Gaza in perspective. Hamas does the bidding for the Israeli state. Hamas and Israel share same policy. Eternal war with civilians in crossfire. Yeah, that's what the powers that be want. They want the Middle East in total conflict because, among other things, the Middle East is a womb chakra on planet Earth, and if a womb chakra gets born, so to speak, then peace on Earth will be much easier to attain. So that's why they have to keep the Middle East under constant conflict, which is why they have all this war between the Jews and the Palestinians all the time and try to keep it going. So next article, if Ebola hits the United States, even healthy Americans will be quarantined. Well, persons who do not show symptoms will be forcibly detained. Yeah, in FEMA camps, if anything. Watch the Police State episode of Conspiracy Theory with Jesse Ventura. As long as it's on YouTube, it'll help you a lot if you don't know what FEMA camps are. It's a must-see, especially since the episode was banned after one airing. All right, one more article here before letting Alan on. Congressional report, Ebola bio-kits deployed to National Guard units in all 50 states. The DoD has deployed biological diagnostic systems to National Guard support teams in all 50 states. Okay, is this a part of a plot to release the Ebola virus on all of us so they can justify quarantining us and putting us in FEMA camps? Well, the police state episode of Jesse Ventura's Conspiracy Theory show did talk about releasing a virus to put people in camps. So, no, but we're not on a catastrophic timeline. That shouldn't happen. Now, should it? Well, don't act like bad things can't happen, people, or hell's going to come back to haunt you in this matrix. So, someone in the chat room saying Alex Jones is a fool, buffoon with a bullhorn. Yeah, I love his nutty behavior. I love his patriotism. And he has a very accurate track record, so that's why I use him as a source all the time for the news part of my show. So without further ado, I believe this is Alan Steinfeld, area code 917.
Yes,
Alan Steinfeld,
yes.
Is this you?
That's me. Thank you. I'm here with you.
Yeah, glad to have you on, and I'm glad I was able to honor your wish to come on my show earlier. Now all that stuff that you're doing in September, you can do all that and not have to have my show hanging over your head. So what are you doing in September? Is it something that people should know about?
Well, no, before September, actually, I am hosting the UFO Contact in the Desert conference that's happening next weekend, August 8th to the 11th in Joshua Tree. I'm one of the MCs of the 4 stages that we're going to have, and we're going to have about 1,000 participants hearing the latest research in UFO news. Travis Walton, Richard Dolan, Stephen Bassett, who else? Giorgio Sokolos will be there, along with Eric Von Donigan. These are the major researchers in this field. Will be all together in Joshua Tree. It's going to be a great event, and I'm very happy to be one of the MCs to introduce and keep the movement of the whole atmosphere moving and alive and interactive. It's very exciting for me. So that's one thing that's happening. I'm sure all your favorite people are going to be there. I think this is a time where disclosure is as close as ever. You know, I think that the government cannot hold back any longer secrets. Of course, they've been doing it for 40, 50, 60, 100 years. But I think things are building to a place where the secrets are about to be revealed. And, of course, they already are, as your news items talk about. So what do you think about some of that?
Yeah, that conference that you're talking about, I believe that conference was referenced when I was at the MUFON conference in Cherry Hill, New Jersey recently, the one that Stanton Friedman could not attend because he had that heart attack. Wish he could have been there, but we found a replacement person for him. I believe that they were talking about this conference that you're referencing, and I'd like to be there so I can ask Giorgio Tsoukalos what's the real reason why you do not subscribe to the reptile alien agenda. He publicly admitted that at the end of the new episode of Ancient Aliens, as I explained in the intro, but he didn't explain why. He just said it's a cop-out to say that that's the reason we're slaves. But I'm sure that we shouldn't debate that.
You can call it the reptilian. Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, it depends. I mean, everything you're talking about, it depends what level of reality, what timeline, thought form we are tuning into. Of course, most of the stuff you're talking about that Alex Jones is saying, the mainstream public has no idea about. They are lost in a fog, and they are being deluded, of course, by the media to believe the lies that everything's okay. So, and they're living in a certain timeline that even if you come along and you show them proof of these conspiracies, these ideas, the wreckage from Roswell, they are not going to believe you because that's not the reality that the majority of the people are living in. It takes something to jar them loose out of their sleep to wake them up to new realities. And every little piece that you're doing and Alex Jones and all these people from Free Your Mind, they're all contributing to a tipping point of awakening. That's how I see it. We're about to wake up to something bigger happening on the planet. But a lot of people will never wake up. They'll think everything's fine. The American way is the only way, and support whatever wars that the country wants to do without even asking questions. So this is where we're at. We're at a really great crisis and crossroads in our cognition of what reality is. So that's the kind of approach I'd like to take to all the things you mentioned that on my website that I'm interested in. It's all about one thing. How do we see reality? What is the timeline that we are riding on that creates a different future? You know what I mean by that?
Yes, and I guess since you're very big on creating new realities for all of us, but you think that it's going to be kind of hard because of the way people are. I mean, when do you think it's okay, if it is okay to do this? Many would assert it isn't. To do what that guy did to his friend in the movie They Live, beat the crap out of him because he wouldn't put on the glasses. When is it okay to grab the sheeple by the neck and say, wake up out of your trance, dumbass, the reason humanity isn't free is because you are so stupid and there's so many people like you? I mean, sorry for my attitude, folks, but I think it's
No. That's already happening when people lose their homes because the Obama gives money to the banks instead of to the people to pay off their mortgage. People are out on the street. I mean, that's the same thing. That's a wake-up call. So The financial crisis sucked a lot of energy out of people, and then, the news media comes along and says, oh, it's all okay. But, the result of some of what's been going on in the banking world is the same equivalent as that scene and They Live. I mean, people are seeing they've worked their whole lives for an illusion that then is taken away from them, ripped out of their pockets and given to some rich banker because they have some illegal law on their side. So it's happening, and the worse it gets, in the sense, the better it gets. The worse it gets for the people out there, the more they will wake up and say, yeah, we have been asleep. What's really going on here? And people have done that throughout look at the Vietnam War. What was that whole thing about? It could not have been about the spread of communism. It was about, bringing illegal drugs in from Vietnam, probably. The whole war economy. There was a book called War is a Racket that was written in the 1930s where this guy said every 20 or 30 years the U.S. has to forge a war in order to feed the economy, in order to make weapons and sell weapons to other countries. To keep the war mentality going on. And that is something we have to wake up as a civilization, as a planet, because it's just not a healthy environment. But it's been going on. It's part of what people don't question, and people are going to have to question it because patriotism doesn't do it anymore. We are one planet with a common problem, which is really energy, I think. I think energy, and once we get free energy and once we stop being ripped off by the oil companies, I think a lot more freedom will open up for people, and they'll realize why they really are here, which is to be free and live and be enjoy. But that's be down the road a ways. So, there's a lot of weird stuff going on that people are just totally asleep about. Absolutely. So
right, but we're going to wake them up tonight with a lot of the things here. I was looking at the things on your New Realities website at the top. I guess it only makes sense to use that as a guide. The first thing we might as well talk about is Eastern and Western spirituality. We'll try to combine the two here. Alan, could you please elaborate on the two, and I guess tell us specifically the differences between Eastern and Western spirituality? You got the floor on this subject.
Thank you. Before I do that, it's I think you set the tone in a sense with your shows as to say that. Let me just ask you before I go into that: how important is spirituality when we have these political agendas oppressing who we really are as human beings? So I just want to ask you that first before I go into these spiritual things. How important is spirituality to you and your audience if these other things are going on? Do you know what I mean?
It's extremely important, but we are not new agey about it. We do not think that if we sit in the lotus flower position for 8 hours a day, we're going to save the world. No, I've watched Mark Passio's 7-hour masterpiece presentation on how the new age is bullshit and it's going to haunt you and the rest of the world if everybody were to act like that. So that's what we consider spirituality be like. We do give the new age movement credit for getting a lot of their metaphysics right, but try to meditate like in nature as much as possible. I do sun gaze. I believe that's critical for spirituality. The problem is people wrongly assume that looking at the sun will harm their vision. It will not. And, that's basically in a nutshell. Spirituality is very important, and we are not new agey about it.
Well, that's good. I like Mark Passio. I like his approach to the whole thing because if you look at spirituality, if you look at Eastern spirituality, and if you ever go to India, that's exactly what's wrong with spirituality. I mean, some people might love India, but it's overcrowded. It's awfully polluted. There's people begging in the street. And you know why? Because God will take care of everything. It's all okay. And these people are suffering because they've given over their individual will to this Eastern idea of what spirituality is about. Now, I'm not putting the whole thing down. I'm sure people will be upset about me saying that, but I did not have a great time in India. It was not a vacation for me. And I went there looking for spirituality, and there are some great spiritual people there. But the country as a whole, the politics, the oppression of women, the awful pollution and homeless and you know, there are lepers walking the street. This is not ancient Rome, but there are lepers, and you know, it's a sad situation. And I think that form of spirituality, in a sense, makes that all okay. And I personally don't think it is okay. I think there's things that we can do to help people and change those attitudes, and it's not about meditating. It's about taking action and helping people live better lives. I think that's probably the most spiritual thing you can do, is help people live better, help each other live better, wake people up, which is what you're doing. So that's my sort of rant about India, and of course it is a beautiful place, and the people are beautiful, and they're just have a sense of tradition there, but what it's become, I think, is not as great as what it can be. So with that being said, Eastern spirituality, as opposed to Western spirituality, in the East, instead of becoming, looking outward for the answers to the world, the people in the East, in India and China and Asia in general, looked in. The answers to the universe were inside. So they developed a science of an inner technology, of understanding the way consciousness is incarnate in the body. Who are we in this physical body? What are we? We're not just the body. We are the energy of the cosmos contained within a limited physical form. In a sense, you could say that is the essence of spirituality, is realizing that you're not your body, that you have a mind, you have a consciousness that's the observer of these realities, and that we're here to evolve our sense of compassion, love, and well-being out into the world, which is the path of the bodhisattva, or those people that have attained freedom from their own dramas and have come back to help other people attain that freedom. So Eastern spirituality, in a sense, is about attaining that freedom, the liberation, the what they call jiva mukti, and awakening to who they really are. It is about meditating, and it is about turning your eyes inward and disconnecting from the world, but not completely, because the world is not going away no matter how deep you turn your mind inward. So, you know, in a sense, the inner technologies have been about what Eastern spirituality is about. How do we tune into the energies? They've named energies. They've named the chakras, you know, the different centers in the body, which are really related to the endocrine gland system. I mean, I can go through all that, but just to kind of give you an overview of without the hardcore science of the West, the East understood certain subtle energies that are now being identified in Western science. So what the East attained by going in and having great masters achieve high states of consciousness and understanding what the subtle bodies were all about, the West is now proving that, these things do exist, that people can have states of consciousness that are outside the body. This is what the whole, I would say, revolution in near-death experiences are all about. I've interviewed a lot of people on my television show about their near-death experiences because it's just fascinating. They have an awareness of who they are outside the body, meaning that their consciousness is not contained in the body. Consciousness exists beyond the body. So in a sense, you can't really separate Eastern and Western spirituality because it's all one thing. It's all about consciousness. But Western spirituality, if you want to just look at that for a second, there's a great mystical tradition that goes back, I would say, to the ancient Hebrews, maybe to the Egyptians, where they understood the difference between the Ba and the Ka, in the sense that there was a part of us that would travel among the stars at night, the Ka, and bring back information into this earthly realm. So I would say Western spirituality stems from the ancient Egyptian understanding of this eternal life, this energy that would give people this life force. But from there, the Jewish Hebrew tradition came, and of course the Christian, Muslim, all that evolved out of what was originally Egyptian, which I think goes back to Atlantean, which I think also is then related to a Lemurian civilization where we first incarnated as human beings in not so solid a form, where they knew that these bodies were just temporary vehicles for consciousness. So, of course, this has been great tradition that has been built up. And then when we had the formalized religions take place, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, in the West, they started to codify what spirituality really was, and you needed a middleman, you needed a priest or a rabbi or this in order to get to God, where in reality we are the gods in these physical forms trying to realize our divinity. And that's what the New Age started to do in its metaphysics, and then it sort of got derailed, and I think probably in a conspiratorial way looked foolish because too many people were disconnecting from the old institutions, and I think the New Age suddenly became the old age and was ridiculed. And of course there are a lot of problems with New Age philosophy and the secret and the desire to manifest your dreams as just being rich and forget about everyone else. But the core of spirituality that began a renaissance in the 60s was to wake people back up to the divinity that they really were. And that became a merging of the Eastern, the Hindu philosophy, and the Western mysticism that started to make its own resurgence early 1900s, late 1890s with the Theosophical movement. And the Theosophists started to bring together the world teachings into a non-religious understanding of what spirituality was. And they were tapping into the ancient Gnostics and the alchemists that understood the nature of reality. There's a law and a science to spirituality, to manifestation, to the incarnation of who we are in our bodies. There's laws. There's a science to how we incarnate and the reasons and the past life. I mean, that's in a way it's a mystery, but it's understandable. And once we get over materialism and our divorce from spirit, so what I see happening now is a unification of body, mind, and spirit, but not as a way of not taking responsibility, but a way of taking ultimate responsibility for being here and for the state of the planet. Does that make any sense there for you?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm glad you talked about that. Good thing it was first thing to talk about. It seemed appropriate there. But let's might as well stay with the subject of spirituality. Paranormal. Now, it's not paranormal. The term paranormal is a misnomer because anybody who understands this, it's not para at all. It's perfectly understood as reality just outside our matrix reality. So which paranormal activities is your site concerned about? Please elaborate on that.
Well, I do agree with what you're saying. There's nothing paranormal about, like I said, near-death experience or ghosts or non-physical beings or strange sightings. There is a world of reality that exists outside the conditioning of our material world. These things are explained. I mean, I spent in my dream state, I had to throw this ghost out of the house because it was just waking me up every time I fell asleep. I don't know how I did that, but you can't tell me that these things don't exist because I've experienced them. I've experienced what has been called paranormal, but it's obviously normal because they exist. It's part of the overall matrix, as you're saying, of reality. So all these things that have been called paranormal, what else is paranormal? Well, you could say crop circles. I've been to the crop circles in England. I've steps in them. Some of them, yes, are hoax, and some of them are totally unexplainable. They were not done by any people on this planet. There's so much to reality that we have yet to imagine, because the gatekeepers of culture, and that's the educational system, our religion, our media, our politics, have kept us from knowing it, and they actually ridicule us for believing in it. So if you, I've interviewed people about Sasquatch, Yetis, Bigfoot. I am sure they're out there, because those tales just don't go away, and every once in a while there are sightings. But those beings, and my theory about them is that they're probably a holdover from Neanderthals that evolved in a different direction, and they were able to become non-physical, or be able to first of all smell human beings miles and miles away. That's why they're probably never caught, because they can smell us. These creatures have an incredible sense of smell. So if you're within a mile or two of where they are, they will smell you and totally avoid us. And they are, in a sense, evolved in their own way. Some people might call that paranormal. I also think there's vortices around the planet.
Alan, before you start talking about the vortices, elaborate on the Sasquatch Bigfoot thing. I frequently, whenever someone mentions the subject about something that Andrew Barsis, the Akashic Records reader, has discussed, I absolutely have to bring this to your attention, because, Andrew Barsis, with his Akashic Records reading skills, he's hands down got to be the best source out there for information, because you can't go wrong by reading the Akashic Records, because the records themselves can't be tampered with. And he did say something about Sasquatch and Bigfoot. He claims
What did he say?
He says they are higher density entities from higher level density that incarnate themselves as a paranormal being, in this case a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, in our reality, in order to bring to light to humanity the fact that paranormal things exist. He did not elaborate on why they would choose a Bigfoot-like creature, but I'm guessing it's because that's something that humans could easily relate to.
Well, I don't totally agree with that, even though he may have access to the Akashic Records. I do think they're higher density creatures that have Bigfoot bodies, because those bodies have developed an interdimensional quality by having bigger brains and accessing the ways to move through time and space in a non-physical way. So I think there's something about this guy, Keanu Laparitis, wrote a book called Psychic Sasquatch. I think they are more evolved mentally. They live off the land. They seem to come and go through different areas. And, of course, they've never really been captured alive. And if they have, we probably would never hear about it anyway. But I do agree with some of that they are high. And I think they are part of the Neanderthal line of human beings that evolved their psychic and interdimensional capacities that we have access to, we're capable of, but of course we've been dumbed down not to even have a notion that we have these latent powers within our minds and brains to access. We've been told that we aren't even divine. We've been told that there's no such thing as spirit. We've been totally conditioned to be divorced from our true nature, and that is I would say, a purposeful conditioning to keep us from our power. And beings like Sasquatch have never had those totalitarian rulers to tell them what to think and what not to think. So they've been able to use the full capacity of their brain to become interdimensional beings, which is what our birthright is, if we can ever get to that. So, yeah, that's my comment about his comment. And,
all right, then you can continue talking about other paranormal things. You were talking about vortices before I interrupted you, so I guess
interrupt me anytime, because, I don't want to just keep talking. I want a dialogue, and I want to hear where you're coming from and speak to your audience, because you've been cultivating them along certain lines. So I want to add to the education you've been giving people with the research I've been doing. But let's get back to these vortices. There are places on the planet that are like acupuncture points that things seem to go in and out of, disappear. They are parallel dimensions that are, you could call them timelines that exist in a way like a skin of an onion right on top of this one, and you can go far from this reality, or you can go into realities that don't look anything like this through these interdimensional portals. There's a book called The Portal by a woman named Patrice Chaplin, who I went to the south of France with, and there's there's a secret society there that's been accessing these portals to manifest different different beings to help them. I don't know. Well, it's also written in Umberto Eco's Foucault's Pendulum. There's secret societies who can access these realms for their own purposes, and some of it is for their own power, and some of it's to help the planet become more peaceful. But there are lineages of portal holders and keepers that have used these sites for accessing higher energies, for rejuvenation, and some of them aren't very good. I mean, after reading this book, The Portal, I know someone who went to one of these portals and was knocked off this mountain by a bolt of lightning and was killed, because you have to be very careful as you access these other realms, and you have to kind of set your frequency at a place where you can enter these other realms, because they are at different frequencies. You just can't go from first gear to fourth gear without going in between. So it's like, this is part of the secret Western traditions that have been kept from us, because in a sense we're a little dense, and we are the sheep that just follow what these religions have told us is real or not real. But there's a whole other level to the nature of reality, like these interdimensional places that have been accessed by great masters to time travel, to space travel. This is what I think the Egyptians built the Great Pyramids for, as interdimensional doorways that would access other realms for greater knowledge, and in some case help all of humanity. But, you know, as long as we remain ignorant to who we really are as spiritual beings, as dimensional beings, we'll never have the facility to understand what the earth is really about and what we're really capable of as these human beings. So, yes, there are portals. Actually, Mount Shasta's a portal. Strange things happen at these portal spaces that you could see different beings that don't seem to be from the earth appear in and out of there. And you know what? People freak out if you do see these things, because we're not prepared psychologically to have these kind of experiences, because we've just believed reality is one way. Well, part of what I'm trying to do with New Realities is to show that reality is not just one way. It's many, many different ways. There is no one reality. You could have strange beings appear through a portal because you're interfacing with other dimensions. And you know what? You have to accept that that's how it is. If you just think reality is the way the people on television say it is, then you're really lost, and you've missed the mystery of what this planet has to bring us. And it is amazing the possibilities that the earth and these dimensional beings and these dimensional pathways have to offer us once we learn the true science of what this creation is all about. And there's many, many levels to this science, and it's not a physical science, it's a metaphysical science. It's not a paranormal, it's a normal. And it's about accessing different ways of knowing who we are and what we're capable of. This is what the alchemists did when they made lead into gold. It wasn't just a chemical process. They were using aspects of their consciousness to shift the nature of reality and, in a way, change reality by making lead into gold. You don't make lead into gold by any chemical ways. It's an act of being. That's what makes a shift. We, as great generators of electromagnetic energy, that's what our body, they're generators of electromagnetic energy, can shift the nature of reality and access other realms and change the physical world once we know the secrets to that, the keys to that. And that's what the great alchemists, and which is another label of paranormal activity, have done. They've accessed these other realms through shifting of the mind. Okay, that's a little overview of what could be called paranormal.
Okay, well, let's elaborate on it a little bit. Crop circles and ghosts. First of all, crop circles. In my interview with George Kavaslis, he explained to me that crop circles, it's a percentage factor. Some are secret government technology. Some are created by the consciousness of Mother Earth, and some are created by genuine extraterrestrial or interdimensional entities. He explained to me that approximately 70%, 7 out of 10 that is, of crop circles are created by extraterrestrials who want to guide humanity in a particular direction. Each different race, he claimed, is benevolent in its own way, and he says if you were to increase the amount of ability, if you will, to see a crop circle, you would notice that the two-dimensional layout of a crop circle is not all that there is. There is a three-dimensional and possibly even more dimensional image emanating from a crop circle that looks nothing like, well, maybe it does look like the two-dimensional crop circle, but there's a lot more to it in that multidimensional image. Can you say anything about that possibility?
Yeah. No, thank you for giving that little intro to it, because I do agree with most of that I would say a large majority of them do seem to be non-human in their creation. They do not seem to be made on the ground by people walking around the field in the dark with a board on their feet, because if you look at the way the real crop circles are bent, they actually are not broken at the stem, but they're actually folded. They're actually bent. It's as if, like some people have said, some high infrared plasma has, in a quick burst of a flash of heat, has bent these stalks over in order to lay the designs out. So there's no technology I know or anyone else knows that can do that. And they do seem, if you look at the patterns of the symbology, you can see some of them are geometric in form, talking about higher dimensional geometries. I've been to England because I was fascinated with crop circles. I went in 2008 and in 2010 to be in those circles and see for myself what is going on here. Is this just a big joke, or is there a genuine mystery? And you know what? There is a genuine mystery, because when I went into my first circle and walked around the circle, I felt very nauseous. I really felt sick, and it was like an energy in that circle that didn't feel good to me. It just made me dizzy. And you know, each circle has its own vibratory signature, and there were circles where I felt like the activation of Kundalini happening. So I didn't expect that. I didn't plan that. No one had even told me that you feel different in different circles. That was just what I noticed. And so the idea that they aren't just, two-dimensional, I think they're energy patterns that may adjust the frequency of the earth, that may have an effect on consciousness, that have been created by these alien beings or these interdimensional beings. I mean, really, no one really does know who are making the genuine crop circles, but they're symbols to consciousness to stretch us into looking at the world in new patterns. I have a whole theory about these formations are information. You know, the word information is about bringing in formations or patterns, new patterns of perception. So these circle or these designs are information that makes us stretch our neurological systems into new cognitive ways of understanding. It means that these patterns are visual field that opens our brains to start to think different thoughts. So in a way, these these formations coming into our minds are stretching us to consider new possibilities, and in a subtle way, and as a byproduct of their formation, to make us think differently. And, I don't know what kind of effect that's happening, but I think in some ways we are accelerating our technological evolution. So that's part of it. There are these there's not just two-dimensional. When you look closely at these formations, there's some strange weaving, and I don't know what that's about, but I don't think anyone's going to be up in the middle of the night weaving these wheat stalks into these basket-like patterns for 400, 500 square feet. It's just, I don't know what it's about, but something strange is happening energetically. So I would say basically the crop circles are energetic formations that are affecting us in a positive way, that's maybe accelerating our DNA to start to access more of who we are and opening us up to a galactic awareness. I mean, all of this, I think, is preparing us for real contact with the other, the non-human being. And we need to be at a vibrational level where we can meet other and not be freaked out. So that's part of what I feel about the crop circles. It's a technology that's preparing us for evolution as an evolution. And they're very complex, and they're very, I think they're great to just look at and meditate on, because when you meditate on them, I've had people who've had, break out in sweats. I used to give presentations on crop circles all over the country, and people would have some very strange reactions if you meditate on these patterns. I mean, some people wouldn't have any reaction, but I've had a few people who would start to have some strange experiences. So they're being implanted into our psyche, and they're changing our psyche. That might say something about it.
Yeah, thanks. I want to talk about ghosts for a moment, because there's a lot of confusion as to what ghosts are and what ghosts aren't. They're obviously existing in another frequency that we cannot normally perceive, and when we see them, that's their frequency interacting with our reality's frequency, so we get a glimpse of them. But I've heard that one easy way to become a ghost is to commit suicide. If you commit suicide, you will become a ghost, in which case that does seem to imply that ghosts are in a state of limbo of sorts. But are there any other ways that someone could become a ghost? And what's that whole thing about ghosts have unfinished business? You often hear that in pop culture. What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Well, it's not just suicide. I don't think all suicide you become a ghost, especially if that's something you really want to do. I'm not saying people should do that. I don't think it's necessary. I think there's always hope. I don't think there's ever. I just read about a friend of mine, a close friend, who committed suicide. And it's very upsetting, because I know he didn't have to do that. It's sad. And I don't know if he will be a ghost or not, because I think he was contemplating that for a long time, and in a way prepared himself. But I think like a sudden death, I think those people at the World Trade Center, like boom, they're sitting in their office at their little cubicle 1 minute, and boom, the plane is smashing that building, whatever you want. We don't have to get into the whole 9/11 thing, but something's happening the next moment, and they're gone. And that's like, if you went down to the 9/11 site, there were a lot of hungry ghosts floating around there. You could feel that right after that whole thing happened. There was an atmosphere that was thick with these astral entities, and it's because of this sudden, unexpected event that, put them into a world where they may have thought they were still there, but they weren't. So that's one way, and sometimes it takes like what they call light workers, or people who help people cross over, to help send those people from being these wandering spirits on the earth plane back into the light, so they can incarnate again to finish the business that they've come here to finish. So, there's just maybe some very angry people also, because, I would say ghosts necessarily aren't bad. They're creepy because, the astral world is creepy. Actually, if you go into a bar that's been like heavy with alcoholics and alcohol, people who've died of alcoholism, there's a lot of astral entities or ghosts in those bars, and they're actually sort of living or feeding off of people's alcoholic behavior, because that's what they're into. They're feeding off these kind of downward energies, and I think there's a lot of negative entities that feed off of the lower vibration in human beings, the violence, the anger, the awful things are, I would say, not being caused by them, but there are beings that are accessing those realms, and it's feeding those realms. That's why us as evolving human beings need to get over those lower emotions so we can lift the whole of creation to a higher vibration, So I think, yes, you could see that even in drug use, if you see people who've done, in a sense, a lot of cocaine or hard drugs, their faces start to look like they all start to look like the same, as if they're being possessed by the spirit of these drugs. They're being taken over. So in a sense, that's not a ghost, but it's a demonic possession. I mean, I don't like to talk that much about it because it's a little bit of a downer, but those things exist, and you just have to be aware of it. There's some neighborhoods you don't want to walk through because the energy's not so great. Well, there's some beings you definitely don't want to deal with because, the energy's not so great. But, let's look also on the positive side, in the sense that we can shift our reality by bringing more joy and upliftment to the planet. We can change those frequencies and vibrations. Does that explain some of that idea?
Yes, it does. And it's also the Colosseum in Rome is said to be a really big hotspot for ghosts and paranormal activity. Maybe people should spend some time going there and experimenting with that. But we want to change the subject here. We got to do shows on this show on the fly because there's a lot of things to discuss. Ecology. Well, that's interesting. You use the word ecology. I'm assuming by that you mean nature, or maybe there's more to that. I love nature. I try to get out into nature a lot. Unfortunately, it may have come back to haunt me. I had what I thought were ascension symptoms for the last week. I think maybe I might have contracted Lyme disease instead. There is no bullseye red mark on my body, but I did go in for the blood work, and if I test positive, I'll be on antibiotics, of course. But anyway, I still love nature. Even if I get Lyme disease, I'll still love nature because it does neutralize everything. But ecology, is there some reason why you choose ecology? Tell us about your experience there.
Well, no, I mean, if you go to my website, newrealities.com, I have all these, internal sort of processes like spirituality, like metaphysics and shamanism. But, we just cannot focus on just the inner. That's not going to change anything. We have to really care of the earth. We can't go on feeding the oil monopoly with their out of control demands. We need to respect the earth. I mean, the body is of the earth. We need to take care of it. So, it's just a natural process of our understanding of who we are, is the sense that these are Earth's bodies. So that's sort of what I mean about ecology. It's not to separate us as what you would call spiritual beings from anything else. We need to look at the whole picture. I mean, my website is about looking at how we're going to live as new beings on a new planet in a harmonious way. I mean, yes, that's idealistic, but, someone has to hold out for what's possible because we get enough, bad news everywhere else. So I just wanted to encourage people to think about there's ways of helping the earth be less polluted, be less corrupted by I would call the evils of man and the corporate hierarchies. So that's why I include ecology as a very essence of what it is to live in a new reality. I mean, we can't exclude that, right? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I have to put myself on mute whenever you're talking. Yeah, that's what that's all about.
No,
okay,
so that's what that's about. It's just we're part of something bigger, and when we realize that we're not separate from the earth, then ecology will just be a natural extension of the body. You hear about these awful things where oil companies have come in and dump their toxic waste in these little villages in South America, or just the whole BP oil thing. Now I will not eat shrimp or anything that comes from the Gulf. I mean, it's way too toxic for anyone to eat, and there should be government notification that no one should eat anything that comes from the Gulf. But of course, that would ruin a whole economy of fishing that area survives off of. And,
yeah, that's right. And also the Pacific Ocean with Fukushima. That's definitely even worse than the Gulf.
You're right. I was going to get to that. The radiation in the Pacific is, and I don't think anyone should eat anything that comes from the Pacific Ocean. It's just full of radiation, and I don't know why our government is not telling us about this, why it's not on the front page of every newspaper every day, the levels of radiation. Of course, I interviewed Adam Tromley, who was poisoned by radiation. It took him years to recover, and he did recover, and he had some great techniques for getting rid of radiation. But no, you're absolutely right. Fukushima radiation is probably the worst thing that ever happened to the planet, I would say, that we've caused, that human beings are responsible for. And
I want to elaborate on that. It is a global extinction event, so said Alfred Weber in his interview with me, and that leads me to talk about what might as well be a metaphysical and spiritual subject of sorts, ascension, if you will. Some say ascension is a bad word because we're not ascending, but we're actually moving closer to the point that is infinite consciousness. But the thing is, because Fukushima is a global extinction event, we got to get out of it. And he claimed that Alfred Weber claimed he talked with people who say that they've heard about indigo children and crystal children being abducted, but the people abducting them are benevolent extraterrestrials who are tweaking with their genes and their DNA and all of the indigo and crystal children and other important people with DNA that's important for ascension, and they are putting them back on Earth in hopes to speed up the vibrations of the Earth so we can get out of the Fukushima disaster alive. And he talked about how, and also Unified Soul Franco De Nicola talked about this same thing in my interview with him. I encourage people to listen to that, about how by the late 2017 timeframe, planet Earth and the humanity on it will be in a 5D reality, a fifth dimensional reality, and I don't care to debate the difference between dimension and density. We could do that some other time, but 5D, fifth dimension. And is there anything in your research that suggests that this might be true?
I would say in one word, yes, because we are actually less dense, is my opinion, research, than we were even 10 years ago. We are accelerating. The frequency of the Earth is accelerating, but I don't like to be too new age about it. The whole idea of indigo children and crystal children, I think that, and I love Alfred. He's a nice guy. He's been a friend for a long time, but I just don't buy the separations. Yes, I think the children being born today are of a different frequency. They are more evolved, but the whole planet is moving towards a less dense vibration. We are less dense. And I think we've been living, my definition is we've been living in the fourth dimension, and what I call the fourth dimension is the mental emotional body. We do not live in our physical bodies. Yes, we have physical bodies. We need them to facilitate consciousness, but we're living in the dramas of our minds. We're on these cell phones and we're watching these television, and that's where reality is for people. Their mental, emotional drama. Does this person like me? I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling sad. That's reality for most people. What we're moving into is what I call a fifth dimensional understanding, in the sense that those petty emotions of love and hate and jealousy and anger and sadness, they'll exist, but what's coming online is the subtle frequencies of feeling energy, of accessing healing fields, of knowing what it is to telepathically communicate with somebody. These latent facilities in our brains are being activated, and this will be the fifth dimensional reality that the planet will start to come into. It's the natural facility that's always been there, these empathy, the compassion, the feeling sense that doesn't have any words to that. That is what more and more people will start to be able to access and feel and have and sense. But it's going to take a huge shift to have that, and the more we can start to tap into these subtle feelings, the more we evolve humanity beyond the dramas that have enslaved us. It's our dramas that have, our relationships, our arguments, our wars. It's all about the mental and emotional body that people have lived in, and it's just fourth density, what I call fourth density, because people only use their bodies to mind their emotions and minds are telling them to do. They're not really in their bodies. I mean, when you're really in your body, when you really incarnate, physicalize, all those dimensions, all the sensitivities come online. But people are so disconnected from their bodies that they're not really living in their bodies. They're living in their minds. So what I'm saying is this next level of awakening, of ascension, if you want to call it, and then I would call it that, this fifth dimensional awareness, is about feeling the physical being in touch with your emotional body, knowing what your thoughts are, and being aware of the senses that don't have words. The feeling sense of like when someone walks into a room, you know of that because you feel their energy fields. It's the whole idea of field effect, that there are energy fields that are around us, and that in a sense is more of who we are. We're the energy field, and we're not necessarily the physicalness. The physicalness is the condensation of the energy field. It's not that the physical body emanates the energy field. It's the energy field condenses into the physical form. So in a sense, you can say we are the energy more than we are the physical. Of course, we have to nourish the physical. We have to take care of it and keep it healthy so it can facilitate these higher levels of awakening. And then if we do that, if we know that we're more the energy, the physical itself will start to accelerate to the higher frequencies. And I think this is what people are waking up, talk about the ascension frequencies. I mean, it's become a big dogma, ascension or something, but I think there's something to it, and I think the earth itself as a physical being is accelerating its frequencies to a less dense vibration, and when that comes along, our earth bodies are starting to wake up to the more subtle sensing of what it is to be a trans human being. That's my take on the ascension, fifth dimension, density argument.
Yes, and just to elaborate on that, when I asked this question to Bashar at the In5D City of Angels conference in Los Angeles this past January about when will we be able to be in when will humanity be in the fourth dimension, now that the planet Earth is in the fourth dimension, and he said, no, you're in the fourth dimension because you're in 4 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. You will increase yourself into the fourth density. He said you could think of a dimension as a country and densities as individual states within that country, and that he did make the statement you will remain in physicality for about another 1,000 years as you move in and out of different densities, different states within the fourth dimensional country. Problem is there are many different other people who have asserted there is no difference between dimension and density, and others who say there is a difference. So frankly, I don't know if anybody knows the difference, but Alan, in just one quick brief sentence, if someone were to ask you this, can you, like, on the record state how you would quickly respond if someone asked you what is the difference between the terms dimension and density, metaphysically speaking?
Well, a dimension, I would say, is a whole packet. It's a whole, you could say country. It's a whole range. Within a dimension, there are levels of density. So there are gradations. If you get less and less and less dense within one dimension, then you cross over into the next dimension. So it's like that. Does that explain it? I mean, densities are contained within a dimensional frequency. It's like colors of a rainbow are contained within the white light, but a higher frequency, the ultraviolet, is not contained within white light. It's beyond white light, so it's a different dimensional frequency. I mean, it doesn't matter what you call these things. I don't care if you call it dimension or density. The idea is that there's something we can access. We're not really physical anyway. Look, you're not even physically in the room here. I'm just talking to a consciousness. Of course, what's generating consciousness is the body, the vocal cords. But in essence, we're not physical densities anyway. We play in the density form, and it's great to have that and enjoy that. But who we really are is not of a dimension or a density, if you know what I mean by that. So, I mean, everything I'm talking about here is an overview of what I'm calling new realities. It's a new way of looking at who we really are. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm looking like everyone else, but I've just been able to put what I feel are all these different avenues of new thought into a website and interview program because I'm fascinated by new ways of thinking. And new ways of thinking are shifting all the time. I mean, Einstein comes along and completely throws out Newtonian physics. Completely, the physics is not the same after Einstein. He created a whole new dimension of possibilities with that way of thinking. But you can see that we have to get over being trapped by the past. There's an article actually coming out about me in a new magazine called Fourth Dimension, and it's very exciting because this is a magazine that deals with some of the new ways of looking at the world. So people can look for
Alan, let's talk about that now. New subject. New sciences. Well, we could probably do a whole show about this, but since we kind of do this on the fly, like maybe there's going to be 3 or 4 other subjects after this, and we've only got about 50 minutes left. So new sciences, there are obviously important new sciences that you would think would be more important than others. What kind of science here are you talking about that would be considered new?
Well, there's been some amazing people I've met over the last couple of years in my interviews. Do you know who Nassim Haramein is? Do you know who he is?
Oh, yeah, very well known for his physics and looking at reality in a whole new way from a physics standpoint, yes.
Right. He represents a new science. He says that there's a black hole at the center of all things. There's a black hole in the center of the atom, in the center of the cell, in the center of the heart, in the center of planets, in the center of stars, and that we are actually living in a black hole. His new science is changing the ways that reality is formed, because he says if you can actually create a black hole, you will develop anti-gravity and time travel. So he's now currently being funded to go into these levels. I mean, you look at Dean Braden and his sciences where he's doing experiments to prove that telepathy exists, or Rupert Sheldrake and talking about that experiment he did when people know they're being stared at. What is the mechanism? Someone's staring at the back of your head, or you stare at the back of someone's head. 9 out of 10 times they will turn around and look at you. And there's just a facility that we have, a biological facility that we have that is aware of us, aware of those types of things. I mean, Bruce Lipton talks about a whole new biology. He says that the cells themselves are, first of all, he says that the brain of the cell is not the nucleus. The brain of the cell is the membrane of the cell, and that all these cells when they came together, they formed a new union of being. So he says we are like cells of a bigger organism, and we don't even know that we're connected. So the effects and the ways that these new sciences are looked at are changing the way we relate to ourselves and each other and the world, and it's a way of building a new technology for a new future. It's a way of getting out of the old paradigm. I mean, do you know who the first scientist really was Galileo? And Galileo created a whole new paradigm of possibilities because he didn't invent the telescope. The telescope was a spyglass. But Galileo said, I'm going to take that telescope and turn it at the sky, at the stars. Everyone said, why are you doing that? We know what's out there, and plus that's God's living room, bedroom, and you don't want to be looking in on God. But, he said he's going to do it anyway. And what he discovered was a whole new universe that other people haven't ever suspected existed by turning the telescope, by being the first person to turn the telescope to the sky. At least that's what the story had. He created a new science, and he created new opportunities for who we are to understand ourselves within a bigger picture. So new sciences is all about understanding the world in a different way so we can make new technological improvements about reality. I mean, the whole idea of free energy machines is, by saying it's impossible, is basing that on Newtonian science, which Einstein obviously proved is not the whole picture. Obviously there's free energy, because what's turning the planet? What's moving the tides? What's the sun functioning on? I mean, there's so much free energy around, and why we can't find a science that will just have a little device in everyone's home that we can plug into. Well, it's obvious, because the oil companies would lose a lot of money, would lose everything. So we're being kept from these new scientists, these alternatives, by what your show seems to be about, those greedy dictators that want to keep us from being free. And so new sciences, if we start to understand the world in a new way, will free us from the dogmas and so science, there's lots of new sciences. I mean, science is now developing an MRI device that can take pictures of your thoughts. So you can eventually will have like a film of your dreams. Imagine that. Every night you put this device on your head and you film what you're going to dream. I think that would have incredible psychological implications. So so much is happening, so much exciting possibilities. I mean, just imagine moving a planetary race to Mars to live on. I mean, of course, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about Mars, past civilizations, space on Mars, is there atmosphere there? But I think with a new science and new possibilities and new ways of transporting us through black hole physics or free energy, the world will totally change. And I think that is what this big battle of consciousness is about, keeping us stuck on an oil economy, feeding our gas tanks with a fossil fuel. I don't even know if it is a fossil fuel. I think oil is a natural substance of the earth. I don't think there is a peak oil thing. I think it's made by the earth. It's not made by dead dinosaurs. I think that's a ridiculous theory that we thought that makes us think we might run out of fuel. But anyway, we need to get off of oil and gas just to get us out of this toxic environment we're creating, and put our intelligence into renewable, and not even renewable, free energy. I mean, yes, Tesla had those ideas, and of course, who knows if the government made him crazy and make him obsessed with pigeons. There was something weird that happened to him, and of course, all of his records were taken. So new science is the key to our evolution and becoming a different civilization. That's what we are so desperately needing at this point, are the new realities of a new science that will change the way we live. We won't have to be enslaved to this kind of economy that depends on us as beasts of burden to prove our worth. We'll be here to enjoy why we really incarnated, which is to experience the totality of nature, freedom, of creativity, not to be enslaved. I mean, that's idealistic, but I think that's the true nature of the human being, is joy and the possibilities of being creative. This is what Bashar says his society is based on: creative and synchronicities, and everyone being married to everyone else. They're not enslaved to energy technology. So I cannot say enough about the possibilities of new scientific breakthroughs.
Well, Alan, since you can't say enough, and I'm sure you can, you can't, because we got to end the show at a certain time, and I got other stuff to discuss, and I want to talk about human potential, because there are so many different points of view on this subject, and I'm going to give two opposing point of views that sound completely different from two very prominent figures in the world of truth and freedom. The first is Jordan Maxwell, the pessimistic attitude-minded side of this. He has said repeatedly that he thinks there is no hope for humanity. There is a big train wreck coming. He says that humanity, the people on planet Earth, the common people, they are too paradigmatic, they are too fearful, and they are too flat out stupid. They are like the beasts and the animals that graze by the river on the African savanna, and then the predators just come out, and even though all the beasts and other animals that are grazing by the river, they outnumber the predators over 100 to 1, they're like running away screaming and think there's no hope for them, and the predators are chasing after them. He said humans for all intents and purposes are the same thing, and unless we have some sort of divine intervention, we are totally screwed. On the other hand, there's the more optimistic attitude, which was given by George Kavaslis, who in my interview with him, he said that he's felt within his heart soul essence that Mother Earth at its most core level is a love-based entity, and that means at its heart soul essence it is a love-based planet. Therefore, it'll be impossible for the New World Order, which is not love-based, it'll never be able to fulfill its true goal of global totalitarian government. And Andrew Bartzis has recently said in an interview in a show he recently did that I was listening to yesterday, he said that ever since 2011, the false timelines have been eliminated. There is no way the powers that be could create a World War III, because at this point the Archon system is basically cannibalizing itself, and that flies flat in the face of Jordan Maxwell's claim that there is no hope for humanity. There's a train wreck coming. So in regards to human potential, What do you see?
Well, I actually am the one who turned to Jordan at the time travel conference there in California that Kerry Cassidy put on. I said to Jordan, what do you think about the future? And he said to me, do you really want to know what I think? And I said, yes, Jordan, tell me what you really think. And, of course, he said that train wreck. And I think Jordan is a very, very brilliant, smart, insightful, important person in understanding reality, but I also think, what should I say, that he doesn't see the whole picture. I think he's had a hard time in his life. I don't know his personal circumstances, but I think he's been disappointed. He's been disappointed by humanity. He's been probably betrayed, and I think that has probably colored his point of view that we're headed for a train wreck. But I think that it's always darkest before the dawn, and I think the darkest time actually have been something like World War II, where the whole world was just in an awful, awful mess. I mean, of course, there are still concentration camps, but the enslavement of people in death camps, and yes, they're still happening, but that was out and out, and we have to do what we can to stop those things from happening. But I think we're on our way up, and I think there is this, I think we've shifted timelines. I think the awareness of 2012, not that anything really happened, but there was a shift in the frequency of what was possible post-2012, where the timelines of doom and that train wreck was actually derailed before it could wreck. And I think we have now taken a different path to a kind of a cosmic unification. I think as we overcome our petty human prejudices, there is a galactic, I wouldn't say intervention, but I would say there's a galactic welcoming committee that will greet us upon our own graduation from our own petty wars and fundamentalist beliefs, if we can wake up from that. If not, the fundamentalists may just kill each other and leave a planet for those that are open to something beyond what they know. And I think we're moving into a time of new possibilities. I think there are dreams we have yet to dream that are on the horizon that are going to activate a greater compassion for humanity. I know it doesn't look like that now with people like Putin and whoever else is bent on ruling the world, but I do think there's a change, and I think because of things like the Internet, we are becoming one whole planet. We're becoming unified, not as a one-world government, but as a one-world mind. And we're realizing we're really just aspects of the same being here. People don't want wars. It's the politicians that want wars. I don't know who's killing who in the Sunni and Shiites, but I would say most of those people just want to live their life as regular people, and there's probably an instigation on the part of other governments that want to wipe out those factions when most people just want to live. I mean, most people want to just live. Maybe they will be sheep, but at least they're nonviolent sheep. Sheep. But I'm saying there's also a greater awakening happening that will uplift us all, and that's what shows like you're doing, what I'm doing, lots of people are doing, are trying to wake people up. And you know what? It's working. People are waking up. You can find you can find health food in every supermarket around the country. You can see yoga studios. There's an awareness that's waking people up to something that 20, 30 years old people could not have imagined. So we are coming together as a planet, and I think that will bring a time of joy and prosperity that has been unforeseen. I think we're moving into what has been called the Golden Age. Of course, we're not there. We're in the Iron Age of war, but as we start to realize the futility of those scenarios, I think something new will come online, and we already have the capacity to feed the planet with the technologies we have. There's no reason anyone has to be hungry except for greed, and profit, and the awful structures that are in place to keep us separate from each other. But, yeah, I do agree with your second synopsis that we're not heading towards a train wreck, that the train wreck has been avoided, that there's new and greater possibilities that are beyond what people have imagined, and we need to get out of the old dramas of fear, because those old scenarios of train wrecks create a fear that keep people cycling down into the lower depths, and we need to not hope, but we need to know the possibilities of who we are, and that there's visions of a future that to dream and yet to embrace, and they're out there on the horizon, and they're coming towards us if we just become simple human beings in a way. The meek shall inherit the earth, and the meek are not weak. The meek are humble who are not interested in power. And I think the age of those power tyrants are coming to an end, because we don't need them anymore. We can be in touch. We don't need middlemen to facilitate our communication. We can have, if we can develop technology, ways of ruling ourselves and just being, decent people. I think that's possible. I mean, it's optimistic, but I know that's possible. Whether it'll happen, I would say yes, it will.
I'm sure it will too. And I'd like to talk a little bit about UFOs, because this is an area where some people won't touch, not because they're afraid it will discredit them or make them look stupid, but because there is a lot of deliberate disinformation thrown out there on this subject that makes it kind of hard to deduce what is right or wrong, so they think for that reason they might as well just stay out of it. Well, in my interview with George Kavaslis, in addition to saying the crop circles, it's a percentage factor in regards to what they are. UFOs, it's the same thing. Some are owned by the government. Some are created by the consciousness of Mother Earth. Some are, of course, clever hoaxes. Some come from extraterrestrials that are benevolent and have no connection to the government. But he said that the majority of the UFOs that we see are of a malevolent nature, because they are part of the military-industrial complex. And John Lear, in my interview with him recently, he said all military-industrial complex UFOs have extraterrestrial connection, bar none. And anybody who says, well, why didn't we use the UFO technology in the wars? Well, we didn't have to, because there was a lot of down-to-earth technology like simple airplanes and sorts that we could have just as easily used, and it would have probably been too much of a hassle to use the UFOs in the wars anyway, so it makes more sense just work with low technology. So with that being said, what can you tell us about UFOs that you're concerned about?
Well, first of all, I don't think the majority of them are malevolent. I think they're here to make sure we don't destroy ourselves. I mean, yes, there are abductions for genetic experiments, but they're not. You see, when we look at good and bad, that's such a human dimension. The world is so much more complex than good or bad, and we have to get out of that either-or duality type of thinking. UFOs are unidentified. I mean, that's just a ridiculous. First of all, we have to change these terminology. Unidentified flying object. That is such an archaic term. There are ships from other dimensions and other planets that are visiting the Earth. I mean, anybody could tell you that. I mean, anybody who's looked at the sky and has seen strange things, they're not from this planet. So I would say the majority of these things you see in the sky, and I've seen them, I've seen lights in the sky, are not government. Yes, maybe some of them are from reverse technology crafts that they found and they tried to duplicate. The majority of them are beings that are here to observe us, to help uplift us in a way to a higher consciousness. And we are so dense, we think everything is negative and evil and against us, but if these ETs or UFOs wanted to take over, we would have taken over long before now, and what we are in is a transition of upliftment, and we are being prepared. So every couple of years there's a huge flap of sightings. They're here and then they're gone because we are being psychically and psychologically prepared for what contact, if you want to call it that. And the government, in my opinion, can't control that. They don't really know what to do. There's no preparation that the government can give the American people and the people of the earth in understanding it, because the government doesn't understand these things for the most part. Of course, there's secret governments that want to keep these ideas secret, and they'll go in and terrorize anyone who has any convincing arguments about them. But for the most part, the government is scared of losing control of the people if these ETs, these UFO crafts show up. But, they're here and they're not going anywhere, and they're here that we're going to have to get used to it, and we're going to have to understand that we're part of a bigger field, we're part of a bigger galactic family or system that, obviously this is not the only place in the universe that has life. I mean, we're not some little isolated warm pond of water that suddenly, in a freakish way, sprouted these life forms. It's just really insane to think that we're separate, that something happened here that was separate from the rest of the cosmos. No, we're not separate. We're part of a bigger ecology, I would say, a big cosmic ecology, and we've probably been seeded by other beings. I know there's the whole Archon theory that is, I think we were, I think the human life was genetically modified to be accelerated here by other beings coming and manipulating the DNA of the evolving primates to make us human beings. And but the time is coming where there's not going to be a secret, disclosure and contact will be known. People will have to deal with it, but there's been it's a slow evolution of assimilation, because people can't even deal with each other. They can't even get along with each other. What intelligent being is going to want to come here and be shot by the first, idiot that says, wow, you look different than me? So it's they come and go, and they're planting seeds, and they're here to make sure we don't blow ourselves up. There's been all those UFO sightings that were reported about UFOs disengaging nuclear missiles in the 60s and 70s, and Michael Sala, he's going to be at he'll talk about how his nuclear warheads at the base he was at were disconnected by a UFO that was seen overhead, or that was the relationship they had. So, yeah, they're here, and they're not going to save us. We have to save ourselves, but they're here and make sure we don't kill ourselves, destroy ourselves completely. And I think the time is coming, and it's not too far off, that we will start to openly embrace this. At least that's what beings like Bashar says. And I was at the citizen hearings for UFO disclosure in Washington that Stephen Bassett put on last April 2013. And it was a bunch of UFO researchers, about 40 of them, appearing in front of former members of Congress, 6 former members of Congress, men, and the Senator Gravel from Alaska was there. And they sat on a panel, and people presented their case about, yes, there are UFOs, ETs here. And at first you can see, they said, you can see the attitude, this shift over the course of that week, and these Congress people got it, that there really is something going on here that is interfacing with us, that, in my opinion, doesn't want to destroy us but wants to help us evolve, but they're not going to do it for us. So as we grow up and stop killing each other will be awakened to a greater technology that is just waiting for us to mature. And the other thing about the citizens' hearings, which was interesting, is that these researchers would start with the American aggression in having all the secrets behind the UFO. So the U.S. government would invade other countries and capture their down UFO craft in other countries, so we would have the monopoly on the UFO secret. There's a bit of American imperialism around the UFO secrecy, and it's strange that it's being controlled by some central secret government that doesn't want us to know, and I think they don't want us to know because they're afraid that they don't have any control, and they're afraid to tell the population that they don't know what's really going on and that there's no control. But I think people are more mature. I think people will accept it and deal with it in the way that will be enlightening. So we do in all realms take the power back from these leaders that have taken our power and told us what is real and what is not real. The whole idea behind new realities on my website is start to think for ourselves. What is the nature of reality? And let's go beyond what we think it is into proposed ideas of what it could be and what it might be.
We'll get into creativity in a moment, but first there appears to be a caller here. It's a strange number, 111-111-1111. Maybe this is a glitch call of some sort, but if it's someone who wants to talk to you, Alan, let's see who it is. 111, you are on the air. Who's this?
I just want to listen. Thank you.
Oh, okay, never mind. Thanks. Sorry.
Awesome.
Bye.
Well, I'm glad someone's listening. I would love to hear a comment by because I mean it's making sense to you. I think everything we're talking about is all about the same thing. It's about knowing for ourselves what the truth is. Getting rid of the brainwashing of the culture that's made us accept ideas that aren't true. And they continue. Like you say, you turn on the television, you read the newspaper. They're force-feeding us a scenario about reality that they want us to think instead of having us think for ourselves. So I'm just throwing out possibilities where we can think for ourselves. And yes,
that's
creativity.
That's what you mean by creativity. Well, the thing about creativity that I just wanted to stress about this, it's been said that the Archon control system, the Archons have no creative imagination. They can twist and distort and work with what already exists, but they cannot create something from scratch. And some people say they created humanity, the Anunnaki and the reptilians who interbred with the Anunnaki. Well, no, they didn't create humanity. They tampered with the genes that were already here. If they had a creative imagination, which they don't, they could not have created humanity. So, but we, on the other hand, humanity does have a creative imagination. And as such, the Archon control system needs to use humanity as some sort of an interface to execute. It used to use humanity as a middleman to execute and perform its agenda. But I'm going to guess that's not really what you mean by creativity in regards to how you have it on your website, or is it? Can you elaborate on this for a few minutes, please?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking that. I do think there's an Archon agenda. I do think they're behind the Illuminati and the manipulation of the powers that be on Earth, and I do think it's the ending of their time because there is a creative spark within the human being that we want to overthrow the chains that have bound us. That is something that cannot be taken away. Even in the worst death camps in Nazi Germany, people were still drawing. They were still playing music. The creative spark is the reason we've incarnated on Earth to merge with creation itself and express it. I think that is like a core aspect of our being, our creativity. And everybody's creative. I hate these studies that say, oh, creative people are like that. That is ridiculous, putting people in the box of creative and non-creative. You're creative when you wake up in the morning and decide what clothes you're wearing, or just going to sleep at night and watching your dreams. That's a creativity coming through you. Or knowing what to say the next second, a creative inspiration. Creativity exists in every element of our lives, and we're here to evolve that even more, to appreciate that and to acknowledge it, because the creative spark is our connection to the unknown, to the impossible. Where do thoughts come from? Well, they don't come from the archons. They come from the source that is the mystery of all that is. I don't know. There's no word for what I'm trying to say. There's something that's feeding the life force every second, and that is infusing us with new thinking, the new thoughts. Yes, we can live in the dogmas of the past, but we just can contemplate something new, and an idea will come from nowhere into our minds, and that will, create a whole new design, a whole new science, a painting. I think the best things we can do for ourselves is to do a creative activity, to write, to sing, to dance, to act, to play music, to paint, to make a film. When we do that, we are tapping into new realities at their highest, and we're evolving each other in our creative expression. It's just a feeling I have about the power of creativity to change the destiny of our lives. And in the future, if you listen to Bashar, that's how people live. They live through their creative expression. They're not working to make money, bills, to feed their family. Their creativity and their spontaneity is what those societies are living for, and I think that's possible here. I mean, we do acknowledge the great artists for their great creativity. We acknowledge great songwriters and actors because they have tapped into their true dharma, their true calling. But everyone has a true calling that is creative, and if we can get out from under the oppressive survival mechanisms that rule the planet, we will be able to thrive within the creative thrust of who we really are, and that's the future destiny of our planet, and that's the only destiny I can see that will evolve us into new beings. And I think that's very hopeful, because wherever they are, no one can take our creative spark away, and the more we exercise that creativity in whatever we're doing, the more it flowers. And we're here at a time of the flowering of our creative expression. And just look at YouTube. There's 40,000 hours of videos being uploaded on YouTube every day or something. Anyway, people have a need for creative expression. We have a certain genetic configuration that makes us expressive beings, and we have to start to and play on that and develop that for everyone, because that is hope for the future. Does that flow?
Well said, Alan. And just in regards to time, we have 14 and a half minutes. I'm not going to say 15 exactly, but the point is 2 more subjects that I'm willing to talk about. You might as well divide this in half, because you got 14 and a half minutes to talk about both of them. Shamanism and sexuality. So what kind of shamanism are you concerned about, and what advice, if for lack of a better phrase, do you want to give to us in regards to approaching our sexual lives?
Okay, great. Well, I just want to say all the subjects that you're throwing out to me, they're all on my website, newrealities.com, but they're all about our evolution, how to think about the world in a different way. So shamanism was really the first way we related to spirit. Before there was an Eastern and Western religion, there was just our relationship to spirit, or just being spirit. And that's the essence of shamanism. It's knowing that we we can access these other realms that aren't confined by a dogma of a religion. The great shamans soar between the worlds, and that's sort of where I'm going. It's like we are all shamanic in our nature because the true shaman has a relationship to nature. They know nature. They have a relationship to the moon and the sun. They're not intellectual ideas. They're relational aspects that connect us to the elements. And that's what the shamans of the past knew, that they were connected to nature and that nature wasn't something to gain control over like in the Western. They were something that we were to work with to evolve both of us. So the shamans knew, and there's still great shamans that are now trying to demonstrate our connection to nature. Of course, there's been an abuse of that. There's been what I call an ayahuasca epidemic around the planet among the 20s and 30-year-olds on the East and West Coast, because not only they're spiritual and shamanic because they've taken a hallucinogenic plant that they connect them to something beyond their body, but I think that's a false hope. In some cases it's great. It opens people's minds, but I think it also keeps people trapped in another type of way of thinking, and we have to take those shamanic experiences and bring them back into the world, not keep doing these ceremonies that keep us stuck in another way. Do you know what I'm talking about, the ayahuasca epidemic?
Yeah, I guess one might call it an epidemic. You're not supposed to use it recreationally. You're supposed to use it entheogenically, but some people seem to want to use it in a recreational manner, which is wrong.
Yeah, but even entheogenically, if it's a medicine, you don't use a medicine every week. You use a medicine when you need a medicine. These people say, oh, yeah, we're doing medicine. But, the truth is, once you have the revelation, you don't need to go back to the source. But this is my opinion. People can do whatever they want, and I'm sure they're having great times, but I'm just telling you my biased opinion. I've been there. I've done it. It was great. It's like, it's like Burning Man. How many times can you go to Burning Man? People go for 25 years, but, I went to Burning Man. It was great. It was amazing, fantastic. And I don't know. It's just I want to do other things. So it's like that. And other people have great times there, and they want to stay there. But I don't know if it really leads anywhere. I think it does the first couple of times. The door opens, but you got to use what you've been given, and you don't have to keep going through the same door. You travel on from the door. So anyway, that's why I take on ancient and modern shamanism. I think shamanism is a very key way of understanding our relationship to nature, and that we have a relationship to the trees and the plants and the stars and the sky and the moon and the sun. And if we understand those relationships, we would be more in touch with the planet. I think and we understand the value of plants and plant medicine. And talking about just medicine, herbal medicine for healing. That's another aspect of shamanism. As far as sexuality, which is, I think, the last subject that I cover on my website, it's, that's our very nature, sexuality removed and from who we really are. It's not something to just be done behind closed doors, and it can be done there, but it's something that's integrated into all of a new culture. I know people stand out. Whitley Strieber said, hey, why do you have sexuality there? I said, because it's a part of everything that we are. It's part of the activating the life force in the body, and there's different, I would say, techniques for using that energy to create higher consciousness. Yes, if you're just in it for pleasure, and there's nothing wrong with that, that's fine. But there's these resources of sexual energy in our bodies are very valuable for activating other parts of our mind and using these energies in different ways. Some have called that Tantra, a Taoist, or you could use that for healing or opening up to spirituality. So I think, you have to include sexuality because that's the very resource. It's the very place we've come from, and we just have to use that energy in a different way, in a respectful way, in an interactive way, into new ways of relating to each other that recognize this energy and that we can use it for healing and higher activation. So I think it's a very important tool in creating new realities. So I'm glad we've had a chance to cover the whole understanding what I feel is important in creating a new society, in creating a world that relates to each other differently and can use different ways of being. And I'm not saying I have the only map for that, but it's one map for new possibilities, a new metaphysics, a new interactions with a new society, because we are becoming a new humanity and we need a new map, and the map has to constantly be updated. So my job in understanding new realities is constantly update the map to include more. The map is not the territory. The territory is how you live your life, which we're all learning to do in the best way. How to live your life in the most appropriate, respectful, healthful, healing way in interactions with each other. And I'm still learning that. I'm still learning ways of communicating better with my relationships, and but it's an ongoing process, and it's the most exciting thing I think we can do is to keep looking at our own evolution and not to be satisfied necessarily with where we're at, because we are in a crisis for the most part as a planetary civilization. And that's that difference between the train wreck and the nirvana. And we're somewhere between those two. And so what I hope I can do is create a road that takes us towards something higher. And so that's what my energy is into in my interviews. You can go to youtube.com/New Realities, where I try to bring out the best of people I need to access to show the way, to be an encouragement for what's possible. There's enough negative news. There's enough fear out there. There's enough war going on all the time that needs to be acknowledged, of course, because it exists. But there's not enough people, I think, giving hope and the message of what's possible to uplift humanity into a new direction. And I'm very happy and excited to do that on some level. Thank you, Andrew.
Well, I'm glad to be able to do it, too. We didn't actually cover everything. I do actually have time for maybe another thing. I can give you 5 minutes on this subject, the subject of immortality. Well, of course, we are immortal because we're infinite consciousness, but if possible, let's talk about immortality as we are physical humans. Now, of course, there are human extraterrestrials of sorts that have much longer lifespans than us. And some say, well, no, that's not really a longer lifespan. That's just because they have an altered sense of time that's different than the sense of time that we have, because like what seems like 1 second to us will seem like 3 months to them or something to that effect. So in regards to immortality, how do you cover it? You got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Well, I think physical immortality is a possibility. I think everything in our body wants to live. I think we've incarnated to live, and I think it's something that I know the great Taoist masters, the great Hindu masters have achieved. There are beings like Babaji that have achieved it. There's something called the rainbow body or the golden body, the dragon body. People have achieved an immortal body. So I want to throw that out there as a possibility. It's what ascension is all about. When you ascend, which means when you raise the frequency of your physical body into a light essence, you've achieved the immortal body. So immortality is a possibility, but it's also a practice, and it's a taking care of an awareness. And there are certain exercises that the great masters of past have laid out about how to achieve these states. Your heart is a forever muscle. It will beat and beat and beat with nourishment. The cells will keep growing. Everything in us wants to live, and it's just the dramas and the emotionality that gets in the way of this immortal essence. And of course, we have to deal with those things, but we're here to achieve something greater, and I think it's in every cell. I mean, evergreens, they die in the winter and they come back. They don't die. I mean, their leaves stay green, but in the regular trees, the leaves fall, and we are here, and we have that immortal consciousness, but, I think the consciousness can be reflected in the body, and I know people who claim to have achieved an immortal body, and I want to let other people know what is possible, and just planting the idea of what's possible gives people at least a way of considering that maybe who they thought they were, there's more to them. So there's a lot of people who've been talking about this forever, and I think there are people who've achieved it. Just look at the legends of Babaji, for one, or the Tibetan Lamas who've achieved a rainbow body, or the teachings of Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda, where they turned into these beams of light. Of course, they transmuted the body, but they've attained the immortal body by raising the light frequency of the physical vehicle until it became a Merkaba, or a vehicle of light. And I think that's our true destiny. And until we know that, we're not really going to go for it. But if at least the ideas of what's possible is planted, maybe we'll see somebody achieving that publicly, and maybe they won't be able to achieve it publicly, but somewhere privately, people will start to have an awareness that we are here, and we can be here forever if we want. And I know that has all implications. Why would you want to do that and all that? I'm just saying there's something possible. It seems to be possible in the biophotonic elements on the cellular level. Each cell has a bioluminescence, its ability to become light, and they trace to the cellular structures. So I think that's a new reality if we want to go down that road, and why not? Does that sum some of it up? Does that make sense to you?
Of course it makes sense. You take a lot of complicated things and you made it sound very sensible in this show, and I'm glad to have you on. And with that said, I do have to wrap it up, and I'll wrap it up by telling you the same thing I tell all my guests. Love to have you on again. You're a fascinating individual, but one of the goals of my show is to try to get as many different people on before giving the same guest double dips. So if you don't hear from me, don't feel bad, Alan. That's only because there's a lot of other fascinating individuals who I need to give a chance at some glory on my show. But I did love having you on.
I can't believe it was 2 hours. It was really engaging. You really engaged me, and I'm really happy to have done it. Hope to see everyone out in Contact in the Desert, Joshua Tree, August 11th, 8th to the 11th, California, contactinthedesert.com. Come to my website, newrealities.com. Look at me on YouTube, youtube.com/newrealities, and email me at newrealities@earthlink.net. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. I'd love to hear comments.
Thank you for coming on my show. All right, take care, Alan. Later.
Thanks, Angie. It was really enjoyable.
Same. Take care. Well, folks, next week I'll be having John G. Vibes. I believe he does work with Bob Tuskin on the radio. Bob Tuskin was also a Fear Mind Conference member. I do plan on having Tuskin later in the year, but John G. Vibes will be on. It should be a alchemical and metaphysical conversation. Talk about some of the things he talked about in his Fear Mind presentation. I guess you guys might as well listen to that as a starting point. So without further ado, namaste. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your trek throughout consciousness. To infinite love to you all.